Dr. John Dominic Crossan, you told me to call you Dom. Why is it that the book of Revelation is so anti-Rome and it's Johannine material, as many scholars think, yet the Gospel of John is anti-Jewish? What's going on in these two texts, if you will?
They have nothing whatsoever to do with one another. And any attempt to make them part of a corpus in any way, shape, or form is, if I may put it politely, wrong. They're both called Johns, one of the most common names, as it is still today. So just because you find yourself talking to somebody who has the same name, John, you don't suddenly think, oh, genealogy, we must be somehow cousins or something. No, of course, they have nothing to do with one another. Any idea of getting them into a corpus. Now, the epistles of John, I think, do work along closely as part of the gospel, according to John, as we say. But all of that is, if I may take something from the Sea of Galilee, red herrings to distract us from what's really going on.
Now, what do we do about the Lamb of God? It seems that that motif is both in the Gospel of John and the book of Revelation, John. A lot of people maybe see that and go, okay, this shows that they're part of those same literary corpus.
Again, pure coincidence. Lamb of God, you think of the lamb, either of the Paschal lamb at the exodus from Egypt, the blood on the doorsteps that tells them they're free, as it were. It really has nothing to do beyond coincidence. You could probably go through and pick out a lot of other things, but the gospel, according to John, is, I would say, attributed to the beloved disciple. That's internal in it. Who that is, what name that person has, again, are red herrings. We spend our time discussing this, arguing for it and against it. And I would say the consensus of scholarship today is there is nothing to do with the John of Patmos and the John according to which the fourth gospel is written. So I would say worlds apart.
I just wanted to hurdle that before we get into the book of Revelation, as this book is supposed to be written to 7 churches in Asia Minor.
Yeah.
And while reading Elaine Pagel's book, I really enjoyed both her Origins of Satan and, as you mentioned in your latest book, Render Unto Caesar. Excellent book. I really thought she might be onto something when I went and interviewed her in person in Colorado about this church, the one that's being rebuked, that's eating meat sacrificed to idols and, of course, committing fornication. This might have been a Pauline church that this author's jabbing at. Do you think this is a Pauline church, or do you think at this time Christianity, that people have kind of taken Paul into their own hands and have gone beyond Paul? I know it's a guesswork, but what do you think's going on? Do you think that it's anti-Pauline?
Well, the danger of simplifying it to that makes the focus too fine, too small. Let me widen the focus. There is a major issue in early, let's call it Christianity or Messianic Christianity, with regard to business. It's the economy, dummy. I'm a pious Christian, let me say. I'm at any one of the 7 churches. Take your pick, Ephesus, Smyrna, anyone you want, Sardis. I've visited all of them. Some of them are not worth the trip, to be honest. There's nothing left, but others are. But they are real churches, and they were real churches, without a doubt. They're not just 7 kind of picked up mystically. They are real churches. Imagine I'm at Ephesus, let's say, and I'm a good Christian. No, I don't think Caesar is the Son of God. I think Christ is the Son of God. But I don't see why I can't be involved in the Mediterranean globalization, which is actually what Roman imperialism is about. Globalization, the whole Mediterranean as one giant market. Why can't I export, say, my wine into the Mediterranean thing? Yeah, I'm dealing with Rome, that's true. But, I'm not accepting the divinity. Why can't I? So I run into a problem. the persons I'm dealing with are pagan, let's say, let's call them pagan. And when I'm selling my wine to wants to have a feast day in honor of his patron deity, he invites me to the temple. He invites me to the temple. Now, we're not going there to worship God. But the meat that will be available in the temple for our feast is going to come from sacrifices. Now, we're not offering sacrifices, but we're eating the fruit of sacrifices. Can I do that? Now, Paul says yes. He talks about exactly that problem. You know what you're doing. You're not worshiping God. You're just being just a courtesy. It would be like if I was invited to a Jewish friend's for supper, and the mates are wearing a yarmulke, and I'm offering. Of course, I'll wear it. The meal is kosher. Of course, I won't ask for shellfish. It's a courtesy. I adapt myself to it. If somebody says, you're a traitor, you're trying to act Jewish. No, I'm just being polite. So that's Paul's answer. Of course, you can go along with it. Now, Paul's been liberal there. John of Patmos ain't a liberal. He's a radical. No way can you do that. Don't even think of it. Using Paul's favorite expression, meganoito. Don't even think of it. Now, I don't see that. So he's writing to these churches, and it's addressed to 7 churches, and this is one of the problems they have. There's a lot of other problems, but all of the problems come down to this. How do I negotiate in the Roman Empire's Mediterranean globalization? Now, I'm not talking about theology. I know, of course, that Caesar is not the Son of God, but Christ is the Son of God. I know that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a Christian. But what about business? What about the economy? Now, let me insist on this. In John's whole gospel, you almost never hear the legions mentioned. That's Roman power. That comes after you aggressively. But Roman power is on the periphery. It's on the Rhine, it's on the Danube, it's on the Euphrates, it's on the African littoral. Inside that Pax Romana, inside that cordon sanitaire, everything is peaceful. John isn't after the legions. John of Patmos is after the merchants. That's why the merchants get it. And when Rome falls, the merchants will mourn. John is after business. Because as far as he is concerned, and in this one he's not totally wrong, not totally right either, but he's not totally wrong, that Roman imperialism isn't just about the legions and taking land. It's about globalization. And I'm not trying to use now a word to be with it today. Mediterranean globalization was what Rome was about. They weren't there accumulating land, have a nice little circle of color around the Mediterranean. It was about business. So to understand John of Patmos and Revelation, take seriously when he's talking about the merchants, and take seriously when he's talking about collusion with maybe could you not eat food offered to idols? When does that happen? Why would you go to a pagan temple? Because that's where most feasts took place. Unless you had a big enough villa that you could have it in your own villa, which a lot of these people who are merchants wouldn't have it. They'd have their shops. But they go to the temple. In the same way that Italians today spend so much time outdoors in piazzas and places like that. So that's what's really going on. I quoted in the book, and again, I wasn't trying just to be with it. It's the economy, dummy. And to understand John, and maybe that's the one thing we can take. We really can take today from John. There's lots of other things we shouldn't take. But this we can take. When imperialism works by globalization, in one sense, none of our hands are clean. None of our hands are clean. If we're wearing shirts, or if we're wearing anything that comes from sweatshops at the other end of the world, that's what globalization looked like. So That's one thing we should take seriously. There's a lot of other things you can talk about that we should not take seriously, or take anti-seriously, take it against.
Ladies and gentlemen, join MythVision's Patreon not only to support us, but there are 72 videos that I did with Dr. Dennis R. McDonald and Richard Carrier, all on the Patreon, early access. You guys can ask personal questions when I go to interview these scholars, and you're helping MythVision grow.